Hi, welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Thursday, February 8th, 2018. Today I'm going to recap what went down at the NBA trade deadline today. Let's get to it. The Cleveland Cavaliers made the most headlines today. The first deal they made today was a trade with the Lakers that netted them Larry Nance Jr. and Jordan Clarkson. And the Lakers in return get Isaiah Thomas, Channing Frye, and the 2018 Cavaliers first round pick. I think it's a good deal for both ends. The Cavs get two young players for two expirings, but the bad thing is if you're Cleveland, those are expiring contracts that you just sent to the Lakers, and that opens up so much cap space for the Lakers this upcoming summer so they can go after LeBron James and Paul George. I can't believe the Cavaliers actually helped a possible LeBron suitor there. And that's where it loses me if you're Cleveland. But in fairness, they get two nice players in Clarkson and Nance. I grade them a B- on the deal. It would have been higher if they didn't send those expirings early. But hey, that's how it works in the NBA. The Lakers get an A solely because they got a first round pick out of Nance and Clarkson and two expirings, which gives them the cap room to go after Paul George and LeBron James this summer. So that's where I give the Lakers an A. The second deal the Cavs made today, they acquired George Hill of the Sacramento Kings and Rodney Hood of the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz in return get Derrick Rose, who they immediately released, and Jay Crowder. The Kings in return get Iman Shumpert and Joe Johnson, and they released Johnson today as well. Johnson and Rose are going to be interesting buyout / release candidates. Well, they already were released, so they're interesting for the contender to pick up. There's an obvious Rose candidate, and that's Minnesota. Joe Johnson, I've heard the Celtics linked to him. I think the Miami Heat can use somebody like that. There's a lot of teams I think can use Joe Johnson. San Antonio, Golden State, Oklahoma City. And then Shumpert's just a young, not so young player that the Knicks, when the Knicks had Shumpert, they thought he was going to be their version of Jimmy Butler, and Kawhi Leonard never really panned out. And then they traded him 3 years ago to the Cavaliers, and he never really got better. He's just the same guy that really couldn't really shoot, and he's a good defender. And the grades I gave out for this deal, the Hood-Hill combo for Cleveland gives me a B for them. Utah, a C+. The Kings, a C-. The most surprising trade of the day, the Cleveland Cavaliers traded Dwayne Wade back to his home in Miami, back with the Heat. Cleveland gets in return a heavily protected second rounder. I think this is a great story for the league, great for the Heat. Wade is back where he belongs in Miami, and I never thought he should have left Miami in the first place. I thought that he should have did what Dirk Nowitzki did, which is stay with the same team his entire career. And yeah, good for the Heat. I give them a B for this. He'll probably start for Miami because he's a legacy guy for the franchise. Again, the heavily protected second rounder for Cleveland. It only gets me a C because this depends on how the Heat finish the season. And right now, they're, I believe, 6th or 7th in the East. And the only way the Cavs get that second rounder is if the Heat finish with the top 4, I think, in the East or wherever that second round pick lands, which I don't really know the protections by heart. So that's just a great story. And then another trade that went down today, the New York Knicks acquired Emmanuel Mudiay from the Denver Nuggets, along with the 2018 second round pick that was owned by Denver that they got from Portland in the Nurkic trade from last year. The Dallas Mavericks are also involved in this trade. They get Doug McDermott, and the Denver Nuggets get Devin Harris and a 2018 second rounder owned by the Knicks, which was the Clippers, which is really the Clippers' second rounder. I don't know or really remember how the Knicks ended up with the Clippers 2018 second rounder. I have to look that up. But meanwhile, nice risk for the Knicks, taking a chance on a guy that really didn't pan out in Denver. And they'll probably play him with their lottery pick from this past year, Frank Ntilikina. We'll see how that works out. And McDermott, a young guy. He was doing good with the Knicks. The Knicks got him in the Carmelo Anthony trade. He came from Oklahoma City because the Bulls shipped him off with Taj Gibson last year. He was a lottery pick with the Bulls. Didn't really pan out on the Bulls. And then he was on Oklahoma City. Then Oklahoma City used him to get Carmelo Anthony. And now the Knicks flip him here to get Moutier. And then the Nuggets get a backup point guard in Harris, who's a veteran, come off the bench there. And then that mysterious Knicks second rounder that came from the Clippers. I want to see where that came from. And overall, grade-wise, I'd give the Knicks a B for doing a low-risk, high-reward sort of a thing. And I have the Mavs getting a C. McDermott was a good role guy on the Knicks, and he's tailed off of late. And Devin Harris. The Nuggets have two Harrises now. That's funny. I give them a B for acquiring a backup point guard. The Chicago Bulls acquired Noah Vonleh of the Portland Trail Blazers for the rights of Milorad Rakovic and a trade exception. It's determined to see where the Blazers use that trade exception. They didn't use it today, obviously, but maybe they'll use it in the summer. And Noah Vonleh was a lottery pick of the Charlotte Hornets in 2014. Didn't really work out. And then they traded him to Portland in the Nick Batum trade a few years ago. Hasn't really panned out there either, so now he's getting yet another second chance. I don't mind this deal for the Bulls. I give it a B, because what the Bulls and the Knicks should be doing right now is playing a lot of young guys and getting draft picks. And from the Blazers' perspective, I give it a C, because they didn't use the trade exception well yet, and Rakovic is playing overseas. Another interesting trade, the Phoenix Suns acquired Elfrid Payton of the Orlando Magic for a 2018 second rounder that the Suns had from the Grizzlies. I think it's a great gamble by the Suns. I think Elfrid Payton is actually pretty good. There's rumors that the Knicks were interested in him, but Orlando asked for Frankie Ntilikina. The Knicks said no. And a good job by Knicks GM Scott Perry, by the way. And the Magic actually got a nice piece in return. The Grizzlies' second rounder for this year is going to be a good second rounder because the Grizzlies are among the worst teams in the league. And I have a lot to say about the Grizzlies coming up, and it's not pretty. I give the Suns an A- because I think Payton is a nice player. And I give the Magic a B+ because, like I said, that's a good second rounder this year. And then an under-the-radar sort of move, Rashawn Vaughn traded from Brooklyn to New Orleans for Dante Cunningham. I mentioned Cunningham on my podcast yesterday and said that he was available. Brooklyn's taking a chance on him. Brooklyn needs some more bigs after they traded away Trevor Booker a few months ago and Tyler Zeller last week. And Vaughn was what they got back for Zeller. And now New Orleans gets another guard, which is where they could use more help. I gave both teams a C. Team grades for the deadline. I graded what every team did as a whole, and I gave reasons why. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. Atlanta Hawks, I give them a C- because they did not trade Kent Bazemore, Ersan Ilyasova, or Marco Bellinelli. They can buy out Bellinelli, but they could have gotten a second rounder for him. Ilyasova, somebody they could have gotten a second for. And same with Bazemore. But the problem here is that Bazemore's owed a lot of money, and I guess teams weren't willing to give up a second for Ilyasova and Bellinelli. And I didn't get the Shelvin Mack trade at all. I didn't even grade that one because that was sort of under the radar. That came in at the last minute. The Boston Celtics, when we get a B, they're going to sign Greg Monroe, which I think is a big help for them. Another big, because that's sort of like their weak spot other than Al Horford. And he's better than Aaron Baines. And they smartly didn't move young players such as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for a big-name player that's on the market. Like somebody like Marc Gasol, who could have been moved. I wouldn't have given up those guys for Marc Gasol. He's a little bit older. The one guy I would give those up for is somebody like Anthony Davis, but Anthony Davis isn't on the market. But that said, I like those young guys on the Celtics, and I think both of those guys have franchise player potential. I'm higher on Tatum and Brown than most. So I give the Celtics a B. The Brooklyn Nets also get a B. They're taking chances on young players that needed a change of scenery, such as Jahlil Okafor and Nick Stauskas. That's who they got in return for Trevor Booker. And they also got a second-round pick from Philly as well. And this grade could have been higher if they moved some veterans like Joe Harris and DeMar Carroll. But they didn't, and they're still on the Nets. Because I think those guys could have helped a contender off the bench like Minnesota or Oklahoma City, San Antonio. The Charlotte Hornets get a C-. They didn't take advantage of the trade value of Kemba Walker. Maybe they'll reevaluate in the summer when there could be more suitors. I didn't mind the Willie Hernangomez trade for them. They gave up somebody they didn't use in Johnny O'Brien and 2 second-rounders. Hernangomez was in a messed-up situation with the Knicks where Jeff Hornacek wasn't playing him enough, and 2 bigs on their roster in Kyle O'Quinn and Enes Kanter were out playing Hernangomez. So good for Charlotte for taking a chance on Hernangomez, but they could have gotten a lot back for Kemba Walker and Dwight Howard or Nick Batum even. The Chicago Bulls, we get a B+. Good job getting a first-round pick for Nikola Mirotic, even though they had to take on Omer Asik's bad contract and get another couple veterans in there that they bought out or traded away already, such as Tony Allen with the buyout and Jameer Nelson with the trade. They traded him to the Pistons, and good backup point guard for Detroit in case Reggie Jackson doesn't come back. And Ish Smith's been pretty good as a starter for Detroit. I'll get to them in a minute. And I like that they're taking a chance on a young player, Noah Vonleh. And I'm talking about the Bulls. And I like what they've done over the past year or so. Even though nobody really liked the Jimmy Butler trade at the time, but let's face it, they got a really good return for Jimmy Butler. Lauri Markkanen looks like a franchise player. Chris Dunn looks like a franchise player, potentially. Zach LaVine looks like a good player. So got to give the Bulls some credit for what they've done over the last year. Because I know Chicago media and Chicago radio outlets were giving a hard time to their front office over the last year or so. The Cleveland Cavaliers, for me, get a B. I have to give them credit for not moving the Brooklyn pick. After they moved their own first-round pick in the Laker deal today, there was a rule that came out that they couldn't move the Brooklyn pick unless they acquired another first-round pick. So I have to give the Cavs credit for that. They got younger with these trades. Hood and Nance and Clarkson are all good young guys that a couple of those guys are restricted free agents, and I think the Cavs can keep them. And the Hill trade, I don't mind. He's a veteran. He's going to come off the bench for them. And I think the Cavs had a good day. The only reason why the grade isn't higher is what I mentioned before. They pretty much handed the Lakers, or gave the Lakers an opportunity to have cap space this summer. So that's why the B isn't a better grade. Or that's why they have a B and not an A or an A minus or a B plus. The Dallas Mavericks for me get a C minus. I did my analysis on McDermott. They didn't move Wesley Matthews. They could have got something for him. And they didn't test the market for Nerlens Noel, who's been a bitter disappointment this year on the Mavs. And everybody loved when they traded for him a year ago. And now Rick Carlisle, this is similar to what the Knicks did with Hernan Gomez. Carlisle just stopped playing Noel. Noel's value must be really, really bad. I think they could have gotten better than what the Knicks have gotten for Hernan Gomez. I really do. And I have the punish Dallas a little bit for that. So that's why they have a C minus. The Denver Nuggets get a B. I did my analysis on Devin Harris, a nice backup point guard. Emmanuel Mudiay didn't have a spot in Denver's rotation after the emergence of Jamal Murray. And now with this trade of Harris and Harris and Mudiay were in the same trade. But Mudiay really didn't work out. And I like that they didn't trade Will Barton's expiring contract because he's instant offense off the bench. And I don't think there's a guy that's better than Barton that you could replace them with. So I have to give him credit for not moving Will Barton. The Detroit Pistons get an A. Blake Griffin has made that team immediately, instantly better. They are unbeaten since they traded for him. I like that they didn't trade Stanley Johnson. I think Stanley Johnson's actually played well since the Griffin trade. I like the Jameer Nelson deal for them in case Jackson isn't back in time. And Stan Van Gundy deserves a lot of credit. And if the Pistons do well in the playoffs, he's going to have his job saved. And I won't be surprised if the Pistons end up the 4th seed in the East. Golden State gets a B minus. They didn't improve their bench. They were in rumored for Avery Bradley, Kyle O'Quinn. Maybe they could sneakily get Joe Johnson or Marco Bellinelli to improve their bench. But they didn't improve their bench, so I give them a B minus. And they get a benefit of the doubt because they're the Golden State Warriors and they've won 2 of the last 3 championships. The Houston Rockets get a B. They didn't have to do much. So I really just give them a B for standing put and not making a move because I know they were rumored for DeAndre potentially. And maybe if they traded for him, they would have given up a nice young player in Clint Capella. And I think Clint Capella is on his way to being one of the better centers in the league. I think highly of Capella. I have to give the Rockets credit for keeping him. And they signed Gerald Green about a month ago, and he's helped them off the bench. He's instant offense for them. And I have to give Daryl Morey credit for that. The Indiana Pacers get a C. They didn't improve at all. I have no idea what they were thinking. They could have used some expirings to get better, or on the flip side, they could have sold off some pieces to try to improve themselves for the long haul. But they're in the 6th seed right now in the East. I understand why they didn't sell, but let's be honest, the Pacers were supposed to be bad this year. They're supposed to be as bad as the Knicks and the Bulls and the Hawks, not in the playoffs. So that's credit to Victor Oladipo and Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis. They have a nice foundation of youth. But I gave them a C because I think they could have improved their bench. But they did not. They didn't do anything. they tried to get rid of Al Jefferson's contract, but they would have had the part of the first round pick. I probably would have killed them for that, because if I'm Indiana, I don't trade future assets, because you're really supposed to be a rebuilding team. So I think a C is a fair grade for the Pacers. The Clippers get a B. I actually had A written down, but it's a B because they didn't trade DeAndre Jordan or Avery Bradley, who are on expiring contracts and might walk in free agency. That's a mistake for the Clippers. And I thought the Lou Williams extension could have been a little bit of a mistake, because I think they could have got something for Lou if he was available. They maybe they get that Brooklyn pick from the Cavs if they made him available instead of signing him to extension. But hey, maybe it works out for them and they keep Jordan and re-sign him potentially, and Lou Williams. Like, they have a nice core, thanks to why I was originally going to give them an A, which was getting a lot back for Blake. Bradley and Harris and Bogdanovic in the first rounder. That's a great fair trade for the Clippers. And although they might lose Bradley as a free agent, they could re-sign him too. Maybe they have his bird right. They have his bird rights now, and they have Jordan's bird rights, and maybe they keep those guys long term, and maybe they do end up making the playoffs this year now with the Williams extension and keeping Jordan and Bradley. So they're a team to watch. The Lakers get an A. You just put yourselves in the conversation to get LeBron James and Paul George this summer. If not getting them this summer, then next summer possibly getting Kawhi Leonard, Klay Thompson, or Jimmy Butler. So credit to the Lakers. Getting a first for Clarkson and Nance as well as those expirings. And they didn't have to move one of their young franchise players such as Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, or Kyle Kuzma. Those three guys are untouchable. The Memphis Grizzlies get a D. You didn't move Marc Gasol or Tyreke Evans. You could have gotten the first round pick for both of those guys. This grade would have been an F if Mike Conley wasn't out for a while, because they could have traded all three of those guys and gotten hauls and picks for them to blow this thing up. But no, you're still... This is just ridiculous that the Grizzlies didn't do anything. But like I said, it's only a D because Mike Conley's out, and you could have moved those guys for firsts. Well, I don't know if Conley's worth that, but I know Gasol and Evans could have fetched you a first. But in fairness, nobody wanted to give up a first for Evans. And by the way, Evans I don't think is re-signing with the Grizzlies at all. The Miami Heat, they didn't really improve their team, but I love the story of them bringing back Wade alone. That's why I only give them a B. If the Wade thing doesn't happen, then that's a C. I just love the Wade story and the possibility of them being a 6th, Cavs are a 3 seed. And then those two face off in the first round. That would just be so much fun. But I think the Heat could have improved elsewhere, although they could be in play for the buyout guys. The Milwaukee Bucks get a C+. They acquired Tyler Zeller from the Nets, and they really didn't improve anywhere else. They could have gotten a wing guy for the bench. They didn't. And maybe they thought that Jabari Parker coming back was going to give them a little bit of a boost. And it has so far. I have to give them some credit. But that said, I think they could have done better. That's why I give them a C+. The Minnesota Timberwolves get a C. They did not improve their bench. They're bringing in Derrick Rose because he got released by the Jazz. And you know Tom Thibodeau loves bringing in his former players. Derrick Rose isn't the Derrick Rose of the Bulls. He's going to be their point guard coming off the bench behind Jeff Teague. And maybe even their third-string point guard, because Tyus Jones has actually played really well for the Minnesota this year. And So they get a C. They could have improved on the wings. And they did nothing to address the Shabazz Muhammad situation. He wanted out of Minnesota, and they didn't trade him or buy him out. Maybe they do buy him out eventually. New Orleans gets a B minus. Mirotic and Cunningham. Or they traded Cunningham for Vaughn. Vaughn's going to be like a bench guy for them, I guess. And the Mirotic deal for them is a good one, considering they lost Boogie. They can play him at the 4 and play Davis at the 5 and do the small ball thing. So I give them a B minus. New York gets a B. It would have been lower had they not made the Moutier trade. They did not move veterans of value such as Enes Kanter and Courtney Lee and Kyle O'Quinn. They could have moved Lance Thomas. They could have moved Jarrett Jack. Maybe Jack gets bought out. I don't mind the Moutier trade. It gives them a young asset to evaluate this year and showcase them a little bit and see if he fits in their future plans. And also getting a low second, like a good second rounder in that trade was good. And then Hernan Gomez, they actually traded one of those second round picks. Or they didn't trade one of those second round picks in the deal. Because the 2 second rounders they got for Hernan Gomez are for 2020 and 2021. And those could be good ones down the road, as I mentioned on my previous podcast, because Charlotte might be bad in those years, because who knows, Kemba Walker probably isn't a Charlotte Hornet in 2020 or 2021. So they get a B. Oklahoma City gets a C minus. They didn't really replace Andre Roberson. But on the flip side, they could get one of these buyout guys in Elfrid Rick and giving them a C minus. They could have gotten Avery Bradley, Courtney Lee, Evan Fournier. Maybe they'll get Marco Bellinelli if he gets bought out. Maybe Joe Johnson for the bench. We'll see what the Thunder do. Orlando gets a B minus. I think they did okay in the Peyton deal, as I mentioned. They get a good second round pick. That's going to be the Grizzlies' pick. But I think they could have moved Evan Fournier and got something the same with Aaron Gordon. But it hurts that Gordon's hurt. And but I got to give them credit. They actually did pretty well in the Peyton deal, so that's a B minus. The grade's worse if they didn't do that good in the Peyton deal. Or if they don't make it, obviously. The Philadelphia 76ers get a C. They didn't get another scorer. They could have gone out and got Tyreek Evans or somebody of that nature. Maybe they'll get one of the buyout guys. They traded for Trevor Booker about a month ago, and as like a backup for their second unit. And I'm sure he'll end up impacting them coming off the bench. The Phoenix Suns get a B. The Elfrid Payton trade was great. But they could have moved guys like Marquise Chris and got something back for him. Maybe they could have got something for Tyson Chandler and Alex Len. But the Payton trade alone gets them the B. And that's a worse deal a worse grade if they don't do that. Portland gets a C minus. They just didn't improve whatsoever. They were in conversations for DeAndre Jordan. They're rumored for a couple other guys too. Maybe they get a buyout guy to go on the bench and help their second unit, but they get a C minus. Sacramento gets a D plus. They didn't get a lot back for Hill. All they got was a player that they instantly waived and a guy that really hasn't panned out. And they could have moved Costa Koufos or Zach Randolph potentially too. So that's a D plus. San Antonio gets a B minus. They could have gotten a wing player. Maybe they get a buyout guy. And the reason why I think they should have gotten a wing guy is because obviously Kawhi's hurt. Rudy Gay's been on and off the court this year. I would have liked for them to get a wing to come off the bench. For them. Maybe they do sign Joe Johnson. Toronto gets a B+. I really like the fact that they didn't move a young asset for a veteran like OG Anunoby. Malachi Richardson will help them coming off the bench. I didn't mind that move for them. Utah gets a C+. I don't think they got enough for Rodney Hood. Jay Crowder's an overrated basketball player. He was good with the Celtics, but I think he was just good there because of Brad Stevens. Maybe this motivates him. Maybe being with a good coach like Quinn Snyder makes him play better because Brad Stevens is a good coach. He played well under him. Ty Lue, not so much of a good coach. Wasn't good as a Cavalier. So a C+ for Utah. And Washington gets a D. They did not improve their bench. They did not get a backup point guard. Gortat, they're rumored that they were going to move him for an upgrade. They didn't do that either. And you know what? I get to give them some credit because they were playing well after John Wall got hurt. Bradley Beal's made a huge leap this year. But they could have improved that team. They could have improved their front court, and they didn't. So that's it for the trade deadline review podcast. I'll be doing a podcast tomorrow recapping college basketball games for tonight and last night, and same with the NBA. Go over some buyout moves if there's any, and go over one big NFL contract extension that's big time for the league. I'll see you guys tomorrow, everybody.